Hey everyone, in this video, we'll start to build a chat app with Django Channels. We will base this first video on the tutorial in the Django Channels docs, and I'll link that in the description so you can see that. And then in future videos, we'll build off of this and build a better application than what's just is in the tutorial. So this is a tutorial. There's 4 parts, but we'll go through the first 3 in this video, where you just create a very simple chat app where you can put chats into a room and other users can view and also add chats to the room. There will be no focus on the styles at all in this video. It's just me getting the actual Django Channels chat function working. So let's go and get started. So you can follow along using this if you'd like to. I'll make a couple of changes to this, but for the most part, we'll follow this how it is in this tutorial. Okay, so the first thing we do, we're in this directory for the project, is we need to set up our project. So the first thing I'll do is I'll create a virtual environment. So I'll type virtual env. You might need to install virtual env if you want to use this. And then on Mac and Linux, you can do source env/bin/activate to activate the virtual environment. Now that I'm inside my virtual environment, I can install what I need. So I'll do a pip install. We'll install Django and Channels right now. And now we go ahead and start our app. So we'll do a Django-admin start project, and we'll call this one, we'll call it chat. And I will cd into chat, and we'll do a Python 3 manage.py start app, and we'll call this chat rooms. We'll also go ahead and migrate the changes. Manage.py migrate. And now let's go ahead and set up our project. So now inside of our chat app, we can go into chat and go into settings. And we'll need to do a couple of things here. First things first, we'll go to our install apps, and we'll add the apps we just added. And we'll add both of the channels app and the app we just created, the chat rooms app. So I'll put channels, comma, and then I'll put chat rooms, comma, like that, and save that. We'll come down here to this WSGI application. We'll go ahead and just copy this, come down here and change the W's to A to use the ASGI file. And this should all be review from last video when we created a very basic Django Channels app. We're using ASGI instead of WSGI like last time. Okay, and now looking at this tutorial, the next thing I have us do is we're going to go ahead and create the index view. And in this, they create a template, an index.html template. So let's go ahead and do that real quick. So we'll open up our text editor, and we'll go into our chat rooms app, and we'll go into our, right here, we'll create a new folder. And we'll call this folder templates. And now inside the templates folder, we'll create a chat rooms folder. And inside this chat rooms folder, we'll go ahead and create a new file, and we'll save this as index.html. Okay, and I'm gonna go ahead and just copy in this template just to make things easy. And again, I'll have this link in the description so you can come grab this, and also the code for this project in the description as well, if you'd like to get that there. We're going to paste that in there. And this is just a very simple HTML page here where we have some text here asking what chat room they want to enter. And there's a text box and a submit button. And then we have some JavaScript here. So when they press enter or they submit the button, we're going to go ahead and redirect to /chat/the room name with a trailing slash. And so this will just take us to the actual chat room itself based on what they type in to the text box. Let's go ahead and save that. Let's go ahead and jump back to our file here, or to the tutorial here. And down here they create a view, and they create a function view. I'm going to go ahead and create a class-based view like we've done in previous projects. So inside of the views.py, go ahead and create an index view. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to import the generic view that we normally use. So from Django.views import view. Then we'll go and create a class of index, and we'll pass in our view. And right now, all we need is just a get method. So we'll do a def get, and we'll pass in self and request. And then we'll go ahead and return render, and we'll send the request and render the template chat rooms /index.html, which should be the template we just created. And right now, all we're creating is a get request, because on this template here, we don't really need to handle a post request, because all of the submission of the form itself, well, there is no form, but the input field itself are handled with the script tags. So we don't need to worry about a post method right now on this index view. So we'll go ahead and save that. Come back here. And next, we'll have us set up our URLs. So let's go ahead and create the URLs file, and then also update our root URLs. So we'll go ahead into our chat rooms, we'll create a new file, and we'll save this as urls.py. So first thing we'll need to do is import path. So from django.urls, import path. And then we'll also do from.views, import index. URL patterns equals a list, and inside the list we'll create a path, pass an empty string, and we'll do index.as_view and give it a name equaling to index. Go ahead and save that, and then we'll update our root URLs. So we'll jump into our chat folder, into our urls.py, and first we'll go ahead and import include. Then we'll go ahead and create another path. This will go to chat, the slash, and we'll go ahead and include, and we'll include chatrooms.urls, and we'll add our trailing comma right there. And there we go. We set up our views or our URLs, and now we can go ahead and run the server and make sure everything works. Make sure we're in the same directory as the manage.py, and we'll run python 3 manage.py run server. And you'll see here we started the ASGI channels development server. So let's go ahead and go to that URL. And so we're going to localhost port 8000/chat, which is what we set inside of our root URLs. If we come back there real quick, go inside of our urls.py, we put chat right here. So that's what we're going to for our chat application. And you'll see here we can input a room. And in the example, I think it has you input lobby. So we'll do that now and press enter. And you'll see here we went to localhost 8000/chat/lobby. And so that all worked well. You'll see right now we don't have a page for that because we haven't created the template yet, but everything there is working well. So if we go back to the tutorial here, next we'll have us integrate the channels library. And so we did a lot of this already down here with our installed apps in the ASGI application, but we didn't set up our asgi.py file yet. So let's go ahead and do that now. So we'll come here to our asgi.py, and first we need to import something. So we'll go ahead and do from channels.routing import protocol type router. And this is the same as we did last time. We want to go ahead and move this to a different line. And on this application variable, we want to go ahead and create an instance of the protocol type router. And inside the arguments, we want to pass in a dictionary. The first key will be HTTP, and we'll set the value of this to be the get ASGI application function right here. And later we'll come back to this and we'll add support for WebSockets. But for now, we're just doing this one line. And now we can go ahead and rerun our server, make sure everything's still working. So I'll go ahead and stop it and rerun it. And now we can go ahead and double check that this is still working. So we'll come here, build the page, and it looks like it's still working fine. And that is the end of this first part. So we can go ahead and go to the next section. And now we'll go ahead and actually implement the room and the rest of the chat server. So the first thing it has us do is it has us go ahead and create a room.html and paste in this code. So once again, let's go ahead and go into our Sublime text editor. We'll go into our templates chat rooms folder and create a new file. Go and save this as room.html. And I'm gonna go ahead and grab this code and paste it in just to make this a little quicker. Copy this. We'll come back here and paste it in there. Let's go and take a look at this real quick. So we're creating a text area, which will be the actual chat log, which you can see here. And we're creating two input fields. One is a text box to put a new chat in. Another one is the submit button to actually send the chat to the chat log. So all of our chats we send and receive will show up in this text area field right here. Looking at this script here, we do a couple different things. We get the room name from the room name element. We create a new WebSocket, and we pass in WS protocol, the location of the current room that we're in. And then once again, the onMessage function is ran when we receive a message from the WebSocket. And in this case, what we're doing is we're taking the data from the WebSocket and we're adding it to the chat log value. So it'll just show up in the text box on that page. You have some thing here for when we close the chat log, it will give us an error if something closes if the WebSocket closes unexpectedly. And then down here, once again, we have some JavaScript to let the enter button also submit a chat to the chat log as well. And then finally, we have a query selector on the chat message submit, which up here is the send button. And so when we send a chat, we also want to go ahead and send it to the WebSocket so it can show up on all other users' chat logs as well. And hopefully this will make more sense once we actually send some chats. But for now, that's just a quick walkthrough on what this template is doing. Now we have that done, we can go and create a function or create a view for it. They create a function view. I'm going to create another class-based view. So inside of the Sublime Text Editor, we'll go back to our views.py and I'll create another class. So do a class of room. This will be inherit from the view class. And once again, it'll be a get method, self, and requests. And this will return render requests chat rooms /room.html, but you also want to pass in a context. And so this view will also take in a URL parameter. So up here next to requests, I need to add that URL parameter. So I'll put room_name. And so in the URL, we'll pass the room name into that URL, and we're going to use that in our template. So then I'll put a comma after the template name. I'll put a dictionary, and I'll put a key of room name and set the value of that to be the room name. Now that I have this view created, let's go and create a URL pattern to actually get to this view. So we'll go to our urls.py inside of our chat rooms app, and we'll add one more here. First, I'll need to import it up here. So I'll import room up there. And then down here, I'll go ahead and add another path. And this path will be, first, we'll need to pass in inside of a less than greater sign, the actual parameter. So we'll set the type of string, put a colon, and put room_name. If you watch the previous videos I've made, we've added primary keys to our URL patterns, where we put int :pk. This time, instead of a number, we're passing a string, so we put str : and then the variable name, which in this case is room_name. Next, I'll go ahead and add the view. So do room.as_view, since it's a class-based view. And then finally, we'll add a name value, and we'll set this equal to room. And that is it for our URLs. Now, let's jump back to our tutorial. And we'll come down here. And I'll go ahead and test the server one more time. So we'll go ahead and stop it real quick, rerun it. And we'll go ahead and reload the page up here. And there we go. So now we have our chat log here and some text here. So once we add a chat here, it should show up in this box for every user inside of this chat room. In this case, the chat room is called lobby. So now that we have our basic Django template and views all set up, we can go ahead and add the Django channel specific code to actually make the chat room function correctly. So let's go ahead and jump back to the tutorial, and we'll jump into the next section. So right here, it has us write a consumer. So a couple notes here. You can read up a little bit here about the different types of requests and how channels accept a WebSocket protocol connection. And you'll note here, it's good practice to use a common path prefix like WS to distinguish WebSocket connection from ordinary HTTP connections, because it'll make deploying channels to a production environment and certain configurations easier. And so we're going to go ahead and stick with that and make sure all of our WebSocket connections start with a path of /WS/. Now we'll go ahead and create our consumers.py and add our first couple functions to that file. So instead of our chat rooms app, I'll create a new file and I'll save this as consumers.py. Now this will just be the kind of the starting code. We'll come back and add more to this later, but for now we'll import JSON. We'll go ahead and from channels.generic.WebSocket import WebSocket consumer. Let's go ahead and create a class for our WebSocket and we'll call it chat consumer. We'll pass in WebSocket consumer as the class it inherits from, and we'll go ahead and add a connect method. So like in our last video, this connect method runs when the WebSocket connection is first connected. And so all we need to do here is just accept the connection. And we can do that, which is a self.accept. Next, we'll have a disconnect, and this also only runs when the connection is disconnected. So we'll go ahead and pass in self and also close_code. And for now, we'll just put a pass here. We're not going to do anything here just yet. Next, we'll add a receive method. And this receive method will run when it receives a message. When the WebSocket receives a message, what we want to do with that data. And so we'll pass in self and text data into this function. And we'll go ahead and first we'll load the JSON data. So we'll do text_data_JSON equals JSON.loads and pass in our text data into that. And then below that, we'll go ahead and get our message from that data. So we'll do message equals text data JSON and a key of message. That's what we're looking for. And then finally, once we have the message, we can go ahead and send that to the actual WebSocket. And so we'll do a self.send, send it to the front end. We'll send the message received. So in this case, it'll be text_data equals JSON.dumps, and we'll pass in a dictionary, and we'll set message and set the value of message to be the message. And save that. And that is the starting code for our consumer. Now that we have that set up, let's go ahead and set up the routing. So we want to set up the actual WebSocket URL path for this consumer. And also, like I said last time, consumers are pretty much the same thing as a view. It handles the logic, and the routing is the same thing as a URLs file that actually handles the actual URL path that gets to that consumer or view to run the code. Hopefully that makes sense. Instead of our chat rooms app, we'll create a new file and we'll go ahead and save this as routing.py. Inside of this file here, we'll first import re_path. So from Django.urls import re_path. And inside of the documentation, if we pull that up, you'll note here it says we use re_path due to limitations in URL router. If we open this up, it will explain over here why sometimes the path function won't work inside of Django Channels. Sometimes the nesting will not work properly with path if inner routes are wrapped by additional middleware. So to avoid this issue, we're going to go ahead and stick with the tutorial, and we'll go ahead and use the re_path. RE stands for regular expression, and so we'll have to pass a regular expression into the path instead of just a string. If you're not familiar with regular expressions, it might help to look up a video and watch that real quick to get the basic idea, but I'll try to explain it, what it's doing. But other than that, though, the rest of this should look the same as a normal URL path would. So back to our file here. Once we have that imported, we'll go and import our consumers as well. So from .consumers import chat consumer. And now we'll go ahead and create a WebSocket URL patterns. Set this equal to a list. And inside this list, we'll add an re_path. And this is where we need to pass in a regular expression. And so we're going to prefix this with an R for a raw string. And we're going to pass in ws/chat/ and then we'll put some parentheses. Inside of that, we'll go ahead and put a question mark P, and then put inside of our less than greater than signs, we'll pass in room_name, and we'll put a slash, a W plus, and then after the parentheses, we'll put another slash, and then we'll go ahead and put a $sign to signify the end of the string. So a couple things with this. When we create a regular expression, you normally should prefix it with an R for a raw string. First, we pass in just the text we want to match, which is the beginning of every path for this, which is ws/chat. Then inside parentheses, we put a question mark, which matches 0 or 1 of the preceding characters. And then we match this P and then something inside of a less than and greater than sign. And this is just a named group that we are setting to room name, which will be the parameter we pass in for the actual room name. And then after that, we pass in this W plus, which will match any word characters. And then we put our trailing slash, and this $sign matches the end of the string we're trying to match. So it should end with this without anything else after. Hopefully that makes sense. We'll go ahead and pass in chat consumer. And since we're passes in as a ASGI consumer, we want to go ahead and put .as_ASGI with parentheses. And that is it for our URL pattern. We'll go ahead and save that file. And back at our tutorial here, next thing I'll have us do is we'll have us set up our WebSocket URL patterns inside of our asgi.py file. So let's go ahead and do that real quick. So inside of asgi.py, I'm going to go ahead and import a couple more things. First, I'm going to go ahead and import URL router from this channels.routing. Then I'm going to go ahead and do a from channels.auth import auth middleware stack. And then finally, I need to import our WebSocket URL patterns. So we'll do from chatrooms.routing. So all we're doing here is we're looking for our chat rooms and then our routing file. And inside here, we have this WebSocket URL patterns list. We want to go and import this. I'm going to go and copy this and then do import that. Make sure I have it spelled correctly. And now we can add that to the WebSocket key down here. So let's go and create a WebSocket key, WebSocket, and set that equal to the auth middleware stack. Pass in our URL router. And inside of our URL router, we'll pass in our WebSocket URL patterns. So what we're doing here is we're taking our auth middleware stack, which will authenticate the user. Right now, we're not messing with that. We're just having no login or anything, so that doesn't really matter for now. But we still need to put that there. And then we take our URL router, which will actually route the requests to the correct consumer. And you want to go ahead and route the WebSocket URL patterns list inside of a routing.py file. And that should be it to get this thing set up. And there's more detail on that right here. You can read about the auth middleware stack and the URL router right here. I guess one important thing to note is that auth middleware stack functions similar to the authentication middleware that populates the request object of a view. So it works similar to how we will use the request object to get the logged in user instead of our views in our normal Django code. Now let's go ahead and test out this code. So we're going to stop the server. Let's go and rerun it. Now let's go to open up 2 instances of this application. Actually, first let's test it in this one window. So I'm going to go and just type in a message here, hello, and hit send. And right now, nothing's happening. See why that is. We can't establish a connection to the server. Looks like there's an error with our ASGI file. Let's double check that real quick. Okay, I just forgot to save the file. Everything is working correctly. When we put messages in here, they'll show up right here. But now let's go ahead and open this window up in a new tab. So we come here and we paste this in here. the messages don't show up anymore. And the reason for that is because we need a new instance of the same chat consumer to be able to talk to each other in different windows. And so if you followed the last tutorial, the same issue would have happened if you tried to open multiple windows. It wouldn't work correctly. So to fix this, Channel provides a channel layer abstraction that kind of enables this communication between consumers and allows us to have multiple windows open to talk to each other. So to enable channel layers, we need a couple things. We need somewhere to store some data, and we'll use Redis for this. So before we can continue, you'll need to install Redis. I already have it installed and it's already running on my computer, so I'm already ready for this, but you're probably not. So you'll need to go to redis.io. And if you come up here, you can go find the download, and you can download it for your operating system. There's some different tutorials here if you're on Linux. So make sure you have that installed before you continue. And then once you have installed, you need to run redis-server to actually run Redis. We will also need the channels Redis Python package to interact with Redis in our Django application. So we also need to install that. So I'm gonna go ahead and stop the server and install that right now. So I'm gonna do a pip install channels-redis or channels_redis. I'm gonna go ahead and rerun the server again. Now that you have Redis installed and you have the channels Redis package installed, we can go ahead and set up channel layers. So just jump back into our code here and let's go to our settings.py file. Below this ASGI line here, I'm gonna go ahead and add some configuration for channel layers. And this can be set up by typing in channel_layers equals, and we'll pass in an object. Inside this object, we'll pass in default, and we'll set this to another dictionary, and we'll set this to backend in all caps, and this will be channels redis.core.redis channel layer, and we'll pass in config in all caps, and this will be set to a dictionary with a key of hosts, and this will be set to a list. Inside list, we'll put parentheses, and we'll pass in a string that is localhost, because that's where we're running this on. So 127.0.0.1, and then put a comma and put in the port that Redis is running on. And so if you don't know, it should say once you run Redis, but we can also open up a new terminal here. And if you're running Linux, you can type systemctl status Redis, and it will show you this here. Once you run Redis, you should also get something similar that will show you, but you'll see here 127.0.0.1 6379, and that is the default port. Most likely yours will be running on the same port, but if you have some issues, that's what you want to double check on what port it is running on. Now we have that port, we can go ahead and add that right here. So it was 6379. Go ahead and save that, and that is all we need for our channels config. It is possible to have multiple channel layers configured, but most projects, and in this project as well, all we're going to have is just a default layer setup, which will handle everything we need for this project. We jump back into the docs here. Once we go below all the setup, right here, you'll see it has us do some checks to make sure everything's working correctly. Let's go ahead and stop the server. We're going to clear this out so we have more room here. And we'll see we go into the Python shell. So we can get into that with Python 3 manage.py shell. And this is just an interactive console that allows us to run code inside of our Django project and get some interactive feedback right away. I use this some in some other tutorials, so if you've seen those, this will be somewhat familiar, hopefully. But first, we'll go ahead and import channels layers. So we'll import channels.layers, and we'll also import from asgref.sync import async_to sync. Next, we'll go ahead and create a channel layer. So do channel_layer equals channels.layers.get channel layer. And you'll see here, Next, we go ahead and send some data to the channel. So we'll go ahead and do an async_to sync channel_layer.send. And we'll pass in, we'll do test_channel in a string, put a comma and add a dictionary. And we'll put a key of type and a string of hello. Oh, I forgot to close off that closing parenthesis. And then we'll go ahead and test the receive of that data. So we'll do an async_to sync channel layer dot receive, and we'll receive the test channel. And you'll see here it says type of hello. So if that shows up after all those lines, you know this is working correctly. And right now you'll see we use this async to sync function. We're only using that temporarily. Once we change all of this code from synchronous to asynchronous code, this will all be removed. So I wouldn't worry too much about this. This is what we need to run this code synchronously until we actually make it asynchronously a little bit later. Okay, with that done, we can go and exit the shell. We can go ahead and rerun our server. And we'll continue on to setting up the rest of our code here. And we'll use this async to sync function for now until we make all this code asynchronous in the next section. So let's go ahead and open up our code here. Let's add all of this code to our consumer. So we'll jump into our consumers.py and let's go ahead and update all of this code to the new code now. So first we need to import the async to sync function up here. So we'll do a from asgiref dot sync import async_to sync. Next, inside of our chat consumer, we want to add a little bit to our connect function. So I'll explain this in a second. First, I'm just going to type it out. So self.room_name equals self.scope. And inside the scope, we'll look for a URL route key, and we'll look for a keyword arguments, and then we'll go ahead and grab the room_name. Next, we'll go ahead and add a self.room_group_name, and this equals chat_, and then we'll put parenthesis s, and then we'll add another, or not parenthesis, %, and then we'll add a self.room_name. All right, next we'll go ahead and actually join the room group. So we'll do an async_to_sync self.channel_layer.group add. And then inside parentheses here, we'll go ahead and do a self.room_group_name. And we'll also pass in self.channel_name. And then finally, we'll go ahead and accept the connection. So there's a few parts here we need to talk about. The first is the self.scope. Every consumer has a scope, and that contains information about the connection, and that includes any URL parameters. So to get the URL parameters from a consumer, we need to call the self.scope, and then we can go ahead and grab the URL route, the keyword arguments, and any keyword arguments we pass into the URL, and whatever they're named. In this case, we named it room name instead of a routing file, room name. So we can grab that with this line right here. Next, we want to make a channel's group name. And I didn't talk about this yet, but every channel layer has a channel and a group. A channel is like the docs explain it as a mailbox where messages can be sent to, and each channel has a name. Anyone who has the name of a channel can send messages to that channel. A group is a group of related channels, and a group has a name as well. And anyone who has the name of the group can add or remove a channel to the group by the name and send a message to all the channels in that group. And so we need to set the room and the group name through these functions right here, and then we'll have to pass it into the group add function in a second. So now we have our name of our room and the name of our group here. We can go ahead and call this async to sync, which right now is just temporary to make this code synchronous until we make it asynchronous. And we want to go ahead and add the group. So we can do a self.channel_layer.group_add, and then pass in self_room_group_name and underscore the channel name. So what we're doing here is we're adding the group name and the channel name for those two sections of a channel layer. And then finally, we accept the connection once we complete all that code. If you don't call self.accept, the connection will be rejected and it'll be closed and it will never actually function correctly. So make sure you have that line there at the end. Okay, now we have our connect method set up. Let's go to our disconnect method. So instead of doing a pass here, if we disconnect the connection, we want to go ahead and leave the room group. So we'll call the async to sync because this is normally synchronous, but we want to make it this is normally asynchronous, so we want to make it synchronous for now. And so we have another function we can call self.channel_layer.group_discard. So we use group_add to add ourselves to a group, and we do group_discard to remove ourselves from this channel group. We go ahead and pass in both the same thing, the self.room_group_name, as well as the self.channel_name. And another thing I guess to mention here, in case you're not familiar with object-oriented programming, we call self dot a variable name. It makes it a instance variable of this entire instance, and so we can access it across functions like this without actually defining it in each function. And so that is all we do in this disconnect method here, is we're just going ahead and calling this group_discard to remove ourselves from the room group. Next, we'll work on our receive method. And this runs when we receive a message from the WebSocket. So right now we're just sending that data to the front end. And now the only thing we want to change here is we called this self.send, and then we send the text data as a message. But since we're using channel layers, this is all going to be changed. So I'm going to go ahead and just delete this and rewrite this. So we'll write async to sync, and we'll pass in self.channel_layer.group_send. We'll pass in, once again, the self.room_group_name, but this time we also want to pass in the message. So we'll pass in a dictionary, we'll give it a type of chat_message, and we'll also set the message, which will be equal to the message itself. And that is it for the receive. Now, inside of this dictionary here, we pass in a type and put chat_message. Each of these group send events have a special type key that corresponds to the name of a method that should be invoked on the consumers that receive the event. So this tells us what method to run when we receive this event. So when we receive a message, we want to run a function called chat_message. We have not created that yet, so we need to go ahead and create that now. So below our receive, we'll add a chat_message function. It'll pass in self and also takes an event. Now here, we will first want to get the message, so we can do a message equals event, and in quotes here, we'll pass in message. So this event object will have our message within it. Next, we'll go ahead and actually send that data to the WebSocket. So we'll do a self.message or self.send, and we'll pass in text_data equals JSON.dumps. And we'll go ahead and pass in a dictionary, and this will be message. So this equal to message. So this is pretty much the same thing as we had before, but we had to move this to a new function that we kind of set up here in our type. Hopefully that makes sense. All we're doing is just kind of, instead of sending it within a receive function, we're moving it down here, and this group send will call this chat message function when that receives a message. And all it's doing is sending the data, the message data, so we can send it to the actual front end and actually show it on our template. So let's go ahead and verify all this works now. We should have a working chat server now. So I'm going to rerun the server. And let's jump back into our chat room here. I'm going to open up two rooms. So first I'm going to reload this page. Okay, we'll send a message. We'll check both rooms, and this one's not showing up. Looks like I have an error. Looks like there might be an error somewhere. So let's go ahead and double check that. Oh, nope. It looks like everything's working fine. I just had to refresh both pages since I closed out the other window, or I refreshed the other window. I put hello. It shows up in both windows. So we have a working chat application now. Anything I put up here will then show up over here. And so now two users could both be at this URL and they could both see the messages in real time as they show up. I can go and just open both of these in new tabs. If I just pull both of these down, put them side by side here, you can kind of see that it will show up right away on either side whenever I send a message. So everything's working great. The last thing you want to do is you want to change all of this code to be asynchronous. Right now we have a synchronous consumer, which are convenient because they can call regular synchronous IO functions that access Django models without writing special code. But asynchronous consumers can provide a higher level of performance since they don't need to create additional threads when handling requests. Our chat consumer only uses async native libraries, which is channels and the channels layer. And it doesn't have access to synchronous Django models, so we can go ahead and rewrite this to be asynchronous code without any other issues. So this will be a pretty easy and quick change. We open up our code. We'll need to do a couple things. First, instead of using a WebSocket consumer, we'll use an async WebSocket consumer. And so we'll change that up here as well to be async. And now, instead of using this async to sync, we can go ahead and change all of this. So I'm going to go ahead and delete every async to sync first. Or first, I'll delete this async to sync. And we need to make two changes to this connect function. First, we need to tell Python that this is an asynchronous function. So up and from, before we put our def for our function, we'll type async. And then we can go ahead and have it await anytime we run an asynchronous function. So down here, this channel layer group add is an asynchronous function. So we'll call await here. And the self.accept is also an asynchronous function. So we'll call await here as well. Down in our disconnect, we'll do the same thing. We'll first define this as an asynchronous function by putting async up in the function definition. And we'll delete this async to sync and replace it with an await, because this group underscore discard is also a asynchronous function. Inside of the receive, we'll do the same thing. So we'll go ahead and call this a asynchronous function. We'll take our async to sync here and delete it and replace it with an await. Finally, we'll do the same thing for our chat message function. So we'll add async up here at the top. And then down here, the self.send will be an await because it is also an asynchronous function. Okay, we'll save that, and that should really be it. Let's go ahead and double check one more time this still works. So we'll go ahead and stop the server. We'll go ahead and rerun the server. And we'll go ahead, open up both chat rooms. Where's the other one? Right here. Let's go ahead and refresh both these pages. Okay, so we have a clear chat room. Let's go and type a message. And there we go. It shows up in real time on both sides. We can go and type anything over here as well, and it will show up on both sides in real time. So our chat application is working correctly. We can send messages to other users and other clients in real time by just typing into the room, and they should receive it at the same time. Now, of course, this looks pretty terrible right now, and so we'll need to come back and make this look better. We could add logins and add users and add a lot more to this. But for now, we'll stop here. This is really the end of the tutorial. You can go in further and you can do some automated testing. I might eventually add a video going over this as well. But for now, I'm not going to worry about this. I want to create the application first. So that will conclude this video. The code will be in the description below, and I'll also link the different documentation for the different tools we use for this. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.